This made me laugh. I thought it might make you laugh. The Smithsonian magazine was saying that all crop circles are fake, and that's because the Smithsonian are fake themselves. And I say that because they're the ones that got done in a court case 1902 about destroying giant skeletons because they didn't want our true history to be known to us. And they're also funded by the Rockefellers, who, once you know who they are and what they're up to, there's no way they want us to know that these crop circles are done by orbs. And there's lots of people now, not just Levengood, Dr. Levengood, but there's other people now that have been researching the crop circles, the genuine ones. As you see here, the actual node length increases in a genuine crop circle. So it gives a 400% extra yield on the actual crop itself. So watch my previous videos I've done on crop circles and how it's done and why they do it, etc. But I just thought it was funny, the Smithsonian, I hate them. Sorry. Have you heard of the possibly true story of a bottomless hole called Mel's Hole? Now, he found this outside his house and he would just throw rubbish in it. His neighbours would throw rubbish in it. And over time, they realised that it was never filling up. So he used fishing wire to see how deep it was. He used a whole reel. He used another reel on top of that reel, and so on and so on. And eventually he called the radio show called Coast to Coast and spoke to Art Bell and explained it to him. Cutting a very long story short, the military finally got involved and pushed him out of his house, and he had to go sort of semi in hiding. And there was reports that the actual military were there and doing something near his house, which is exactly what he said. He ended up going off and staying with some Native Americans who also showed him another hole. Did you know NASA's Perseverance lander found a lump of metal in between some rocks on Mars? Now, NASA says it's probably part of their craft. However, was there any other structures on Mars that could be alien? Well, looking here at the Daily Star, when you click on the image, the link, it's dead. But I managed to go back and find, using a weigh machine, the actual images that was on that newspaper, and as you can see, they clearly look like Egyptian type carvings. Now, were the Anunnaki on Mars? Well, yes, they were. Look at these. This is Enki's name in different tablets. Now, for someone to say that Enki was made up over thousands of years, written in different tablets over and over and over. So yes, the Anunnaki were on Mars, and they are the ones that taught the Egyptians how to create these statues. So they would have done it themselves. Any religious people want me to explain to them why God is classed as a male figure? I will do that right now. And it's not because what it says here, masculine. Now, if you look here, our Father who art in heaven, Father, okay? Heaven is space. Now, if you don't believe me, then just take any Bible you want. When man looks to the heavens and sees the sun and the moon and the stars. Now, forget heaven for a second. What's in space? The sun, the moon, and, you guessed it, stars. Heaven should have been translated as space, but obviously back then they didn't know the word for space. Now, here is a paragraph taken from the older text that the Bible copied from, talking about Enki creating humans and getting us humans to carry his baskets. Enki, Mao, created humans, many more texts that go through this. There is your God, there is your Father, an alien from another planet. Sorry. True.
More than a dozen striking similarities to what Plato had described as...
This person's talking about the Eye of Sahara, the Rikat structure in Africa, and saying that it matches some of what Plato said. Now, for everything that he says that matches Plato, I can then say the opposite, such as Plato says it's supposed to be 150 miles away from Athens, whereas the Rikat structure is 2,000 odd miles away. So for everything that they think they can point, and bear in mind there's no evidence whatsoever that anything was there other than just a circle. However, if you are really interested in finding out where Atlantis is, I believe, and no one's debunked me, found Atlantis. It's on YouTube, or you can just go and watch it on the pinned videos on mine. And I do not go by Plato because we know... Well, watch my video and you'll see why I don't go by what Plato says. I go by other evidence. And that is why I've not been debunked. Now that everyone's getting interested in UFOs thanks to the military pretending to shoot down UFOs, watch my previous video to know what that means. There's a website that I've got which is called Our True History. Now, this doesn't just cover modern UFOs. I actually researched for 40 years spirits, Bigfoots, ancient Egypt, Greece, etc., India. And the reason I do everything is because they are all connected. So unlike other researchers which will just tell you one little thing, I cover it all. And if you don't believe me, just watch my videos on TikTok. Over 900 and something odd videos already. Or you can go to outruehistory.co.uk and watch them there on YouTube as well. You can find everything. I've also got podcasts and links. So if you are interested in to know how spirits or light energy beings, orbs, are connected to aliens and connected to Bigfoot, and how the ancient tablets, I go through it all because I've been doing it for you guys. Our True History. Jesus will save you. God will forgive you for your sins are the type of messages I receive while I'm doing my live video chats. While I'm talking about aliens creating humans, religious people come on and basically try and say that I'm wrong and that there's Jesus, etc. Now, I have a feeling these people do not actually genuinely believe there is a Jesus and even a God. And the reason why I say that is because when I put my videos out, like video number 954, where I show the God is an Anunnaki called Enki that they're referring to when they say the Father, with proof, I show proof, and no religious person comes on and actually tells me I'm wrong on that. So they only seem to do it on my live chats. So if there's any religious people, go watch my video 954. Please, I've done 900 odd videos, and some of those are about Jesus and God, etc. But no one's come back to me. Tell me that I'm wrong, please. The mystery bag that the Anunnaki gods, alien race, possibly had. Now, I say possibly. If you go back and watch my previous videos, I show the exact same bag, including the little holes there and everything, that Egypt has in its museum. So we know it's a bag. But, I mean, some people still say, oh, no, it's a battery. It's used for various different things. And I thought I'd just go back now and show whether or not the Anunnaki actually admitted that they carried bags instead of batteries or whatever else it could be. And so if you go to the Oxford University website, where they translated many ancient texts about the Anunnaki, etc., they did carry bags around. The bags were all over the place. So does that prove it's a bag? Well, I think the previous video I done does, but hopefully this will help you understand. They did carry bags.
You talk about God as a male. Why? Who's to say that God has a gender?
I prove that he has a gender, and his name is Enki. They're talking about the Father. Go watch my video number 954. I prove it. Just to let everyone know, on my website, outruehistory.co.uk, as well as the sets of 5 videos and sets of 50, if you want to watch them in a big bulk lump, I've now added new specials on there, which is free of charge, and you just basically watch other videos that I've done. Do you want proof on how Noah was told by Enki to build his ark? An alien telling Noah. Well, it's all here on my video, the actual proof that you need. Noah's ark, proof aliens involved, and I read translations of tablets that were translated back in the early 1900s. So although Zachariah Sitchin had got it perfect, there are different versions of the same event, in other words, different tablets of Noah being told by Enki. And I read out this, and I also compare it to one of the other tablets. So you see that they're actually the same, which clearly shows the Bible was a copy of these older tablets. And because of my knowledge, I read out things that help you understand certain people's names, etc. Whereas if you just read this, you might, if you don't know, you might just take it a different way. So that's on my Patreon page, Our True History.
Everything is connected. In a world you thought you knew, one book will change the way you look at life forever. 30 years of research explains how Earth was smashed into. Discover the real name of the alien race we call the Anunnaki. Learn why everything started in ancient Mesopotamia, now modern Iraq. Examine the proof between humans, Anunnaki, and Egyptian rulers. You will find out that there were real giants living with humans. The pyramids were not tombs. They were technical devices built by aliens and man. Do you believe the dinosaurs all died out millions of years ago? Think again. Who really is on the dark side of our moon? Understand who really controls Earth. Crop circles are not just created by man. Look inside the book and discover the mysterious forces at work. Bigfoot is not a myth. They are real and connected to aliens. Everything you need to know and so much more at your fingertips. Available from Amazon, Kindle, and OurUntoldHistory.com.
Breaking news, building blocks of life did come from meteorites, unless you're a numpty scientist. Now, the reason why I say that, I don't think these scientists have thought this through very well. It's just a bit of logic, really. So basically, they're saying certain elements came on a meteorite, therefore that's what probably started life. A meteorite from elsewhere. However, when you look at the actual chemicals that they believe created life on this meteorite, we actually have already had these elements. We already knew about them. So what I'm saying is, billions of years ago, we probably still had these elements, because we clearly have them now. Otherwise, they wouldn't have already done papers on them, etc. So why does it have to be a meteorite that started life here on Earth when we've already got the same chemicals here on Earth? And that's why I don't like scientists sometimes. They don't think, in my opinion. Here's something you may not have thought of regarding the alien Anunnaki race, where they hold this pine cone. And for the longest time, pretty much most people believe that that's a stone object that they hold in the shape of a cone. However, I now believe it may not be a cone, it may be actually a crystal. Now, this crystal's a foot tall, and the Anunnaki, being 8 to 12 foot tall, that would have been a foot long as well, which obviously could have been put into their basket if they needed it to. Now, the reason why I'm talking about these crystals is not only were they put on top of Buddhist temples, crystals, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, could actually have a broadcasting and receiving capabilities without external power. You can actually just use crystals. So what if this was a transmitter and receiver connected to their watch, so they could chat to people from a distance?
And God got angry and cast him out of heaven.
This lady's talking about the Bible and Adam, out of Adam and Eve. Now, I thought I'd go through different people's Bible versions, because she's saying that an archangel Michael came down and picked Adam up, which is true. A messenger, which is fact, not an angel. And an archangel is a pilot, so an Anunnaki pilot came down. We've got the original texts. I've read them out on TikTok. You can go and read them. They're in the Oxford University website translations, if you're interested. And this lady carries on to say that God cast him out for refusing. And yes, the original tablets say that Adam refused to eat and drink the food on Nibiru. Yes, the translation is heaven, but it's actually Nibiru. And because of that, King Anu sent him back to Earth. So there you go. Facts. Aliens were here and left this for us. So researcher Michael Jellinger suggests that the ancient structures created some sort of circuit board. So I've been doing my own research into Indian temples, and most of them seem to have a spire which could attract lightning, or have a crystal which again produces power. So you can kind of see the similarity there between that and a circuit board. And when you look here, you could imagine these being pylons. Now, if you remember, Nikola Tesla built his own free energy device, which didn't require wires, and unfortunately was told to bring it down because it means we couldn't charge, or they couldn't charge people for free energy. So are these temples being used for free energy, just like Michael Tellinger says? Well, Angkor Wat's probably the best point, which I'm running out of time, so watch my next video, but do like, comment, etc. if you are enjoying these videos. I finally get to Göbekli Tepe. Now, Tepe is just a word for a mound, and that's in Göbekli. And there's a few other mounds around in different places, but this one's significant because they date it, mainstream date it, and there's various different dates, but I'm just using this one here to give you an example, 9600 BC, which would place it around the time of the flood. Now, this was buried. Now, people seem to believe that it was buried because someone decided to bury it, as opposed to, hey, it was flooded over just like all the other buildings were. So, which makes more sense to me. So I would say that it was flooded over because any ancient stuff that's around that time is buried. So either someone's gone around and said, yeah, bury that one, bury that one, bury that one, or the deluge, which was a great flood, deluge being a tsunami, not a flood. Watch my previous videos, might make sense. I'm running out of time, so I'll carry on Göbekli Tepe in the next video. Göbekli Tepe. Now, before I tell you my thoughts on it, let's have a look at what we actually already know. So these are the sort of structures that's there. It's on a mound, and there's more than one, as you can see here. Now, it's not been totally excavated, but they know that there was no settlements there. In other words, it was void of people actually as a civilization. So whoever built these left them there for a reason out of the way. Now, these stones here are absolutely massive and would have been very hard to have done in the time period that they say they were around. Now, obviously, these little images here show sticks, etc. But when you look and realise this is supposed to be at least 8,000 to possibly 12,000 years ago when it was built, and obviously the flood flooded it over, and that's my opinion. I'm running out of time. I'll tell you some more on the next video. Following on from my last video about Göbekli Tepe. Now, Göbekli Tepe is here in Turkey. And guess where Mesopotamia is? Now, this is very old, at least 8,000 to 12,000 years old, possibly even older. Now, why isn't it in India? Why isn't it anywhere else? Because it would have been the Anunnaki. And guess where the Anunnaki was? I'll give you one clue. There you go. So that's the reason why it's not over in Ireland, etc. It's because it was to do with the Anunnaki. Now, interestingly, the people that study these believe that there was possibly some sort of lid feature that went over the top of this. And on each of these actual carvings, you see pictures, mostly of animals. And I'm running out of time, and I'll explain what I believe Göbekli Tepe was in the next video. Now, people do say it's religious and sacrifices, but I don't agree. Göbekli Tepe, these are some of the carvings of animals that are on the stones in and around Göbekli Tepe. Now, there are one or two that have human figures with heads missing off the carvings, but majority of them are literally animals. And I think some of the animals are extinct, which is another reason why it's possibly as old as people say it is, which will be up to possibly 12,000 years ago, when men were hunter-gatherers. So to build such structures as this with these massive pillars would be an undertaking too much for hunter-gatherers back then. Now, there is many of these. In fact, if you look, you'll see that there's actually many of these. So I think they were storage places for possibly the animals that's actually on the stones, showing you what's inside. They may have even stored wheat and barley there, but that's what I think it was. That explains why there was no people around the area. Have I worked out what the breastplate was on the priests that helped carry the Ark of the Covenant? Let me know your thoughts. So basically, the story goes that the priests would use the breastplate to communicate with God. Now, turns out the breastplate is made of gemstones. And certain gemstones, such as this particular type here, galena, can actually, well, I'll read it to you. Galena does have genuine ability to extract music and voices from radio waves. In other words, when they talk to their gods, they were using the breastplate as a communications device. Possibly each gemstone would produce a certain frequency to allow them to talk to a different Anunnaki, thereby talking to God, as it says in the ancient texts. Has our true history done it again? Have I figured something out? Let me know in the comments. Is there any similarities between the ancient alien gods, the Anunnaki, and our elites? Well, first of all, they're both in charge of us, unfortunately. Now, here in the oldest known texts, Enlil, who was a god, you can see there, Enlil, so forget the almighty being, we're talking about the Anunnaki here, because that's what the Bible talks about. And in fact, this particular passage I'm about to read out is in the Bible, but you'll know it slightly differently because of the translation errors that they had back then through 3 different languages. So you got Sumerian, Aramaic, Babylonian, and then Hebrew, and then English. So you'll know this bit when you see it about genocide. Anyway, so Enlil wanted to wipe out people. Give the order that the Surapa disease shall break out. Now, first of all, if it was an almighty being, he wouldn't need a disease to wipe out. So I'm just throwing out any similarities between our... Oh, you just have to watch to the end. This person here, you're going to have a laugh. So this person here is trying to debunk Zachariah Sitchin. And he's talking to someone else. And let's have a listen to what he says, and then we'll all have a huge giggle at this person's expense.
So I want to talk about a very famous and very popular author who dabbles in fringe and especially pseudoscience, and that is Zachariah Sitchin. And so my biggest question is, he's famous for all of these translations and theories and all of this other good stuff that I know really very little about. My question...
He knows very little about. Did you hear that? So this numpty here has just said pseudoscience and all the translations, etc. So in other words, Zachariah Sitchin's wrong, and yet this person knows very little about. In other words, how does he know that Zachariah Sitchin's wrong if you know very little about it? Numpty. Just put a new video on my Patreon page. There's already 75 on there. This one's called Debunking the Debunkers, where I go through a video that's on YouTube where they're trying to debunk Zachariah Sitchin, and hopefully you'll agree with me that I made them look silly. But there's also other videos on there. There's a Noah's Ark proof video. I'm just going through. So it's on patreon.com. Everything you need to know about spirits. 3-hour documentary that I made just for the Patreon people, and literally it does cover everything you need to know about spirits. There's also live chats and Christ knows how many more videos on here. So feel free to visit my Patreon site called Our True History on patreon.com. Thanks for watching. Oh God, here we go. I had someone on my post saying Lord God loves me. Let's take the rose-tinted glasses off everybody, including religious people, for whatever religion. So let's have a look now. We've got the Lord God. Now, funny enough, in ancient Greece, Lord was used. Now, I thought the Lord was never to take his name in vain, but lo and behold, gods in Greece also had them. And then you've got gods in Rome, also lords. And then you've got Lord Shiva in India. Then you've got lords in China, and so on. In other words, wherever the Anunnaki were. Now, the oldest known texts of any lords is Sumerian, which was the Anunnaki. So either I'm right and they're all one of the same race, Anunnaki, or everyone decided to use, even though they probably didn't even communicate with each other, the same word Lord. I've been sent this video a few times where people ask me my opinion. I think the outside is possibly a facade for a movie set, and then the inside is a totally different location, totally different time. Someone stitched a few videos together to make people believe that it's all one of the same new secret building that's just been broken into. But of course, if you use a bit of common sense, you realise that there's already lights been put up inside there. There you go, see all the lights. So it's totally different time frame, etc. So if you scroll on, you'll find more things such as these skulls, which I believe now we're looking at a storeroom, not in the same place, nowhere near the same place, different videos, different edited together, a storeroom for people that sell these things. And then same goes for the alien that you'll see in a second here. This is just another fake thing that's been stitched to the same video to make you all believe. Exclusive about the royal crown and scepter, here only on Our True History. So I think I've worked out what the actual scepter is. Now, forget everything you've been told. This goes way back. In fact, so far back that the Anunnaki would give selective people the crown and scepter to rule the land. But why? Is this just a symbolic gesture? No, because there's this particular item in India that was also given to leaders that actually had power that could fire lightning bolts from it. So in other words, it was some device. And when you actually look at this, yes, they look the same. Now, the Anunnaki would actually admit it used power. So here on A Gilgamesh Story, Enkidu, come now, you heroic bearer of a scepter of wide-ranging power. So in other words, the Anunnaki gave the leaders weapons to make sure they stayed in charge. Thank you. Always be the smartest in the room. In other words, don't post on people's posts if you have no idea what you're talking about. So this one here, I thought it would be fun to go through these. People telling me I'm wrong, but then realising that I'm actually right. This person here, talking about Bigfoot, they are descendants of the ancient Nephilim and their hair is transparent, giving them the abilities beyond normal camouflage. And I wrote, is there any evidence that they are from Nephilim, which is Middle East, Bigfoot, America and Russia? Just one bit of evidence, please. And then they wrote, besides from matching the description... No, they haven't got any. So that was that one. Another one here was to do with the Antarctica. Question, have you ever got info on the 13,000-foot voidless ball that they discovered that was one of the reasons the treaty was created? And then I wrote, in 40 years of research, the first time I've heard that. What's your source? Please don't point me to a YouTuber. And then they didn't point me anywhere because it probably was a YouTuber. Another one's to do with whether or not space is water. And this person has wrote, yes, simply above our waters. In other words, there is no space. And then I wrote, Halley's Comet travels in water, meaning it would have friction and would have stopped thousands of years ago. And then they wrote, there's no such thing as Halley's Comet, but they've deleted that. So then I wrote, you think Halley's Comet is make-believe? Wow. But of course, they didn't ever get back to me about the water. Another one here, light beam. This is to do with the pyramid. Bro, they used a golden cap on top. And I wrote, bro, sis, can you... No, they didn't. Show me a pyramid or capstone. You can't. You've been told, but no proof. In other words, there is no capstone. So when I've been told by this person, bro, that I'm wrong, basically I'm right, and they never got back to me as usual. I'm always right. I know it sounds big-headed, but really, if you're going to post something, at least back it up. I'm happy to be wrong. This person's talking about this person's a bit weird. This is to do with colour of the first Homo sapiens. I said they were dark-skinned and the Anunnaki were pale. And this person wrote, not true. This was debunked and the motive was racism. The grave sites found in the ancients matched those living in the current Africa. And I wrote, show me who debunked it. Please just don't show me the papers. I need to see the scientific papers. I'll wait. And then they just wrote copy. In other words... There's hundreds of these all over my videos where people post things as if they know stuff. Just don't bother posting. Or say, look, I believe, but don't tell me I'm wrong, not true, like that, for example, when you have nothing to back it up with. Whereas if you watch my videos, you see I point to where the evidence is, if available. If not, I then say I believe. But I'll never tell you it's a fact until I've got something I can back it up with. So maybe don't do this, people. Thanks. What's the difference between ancient aliens and modern aliens? Well, the ancient aliens were here 450,000 years ago, genetically modified hominids to create the first humans in Africa, and then eventually they bred with those ones that they created to create Homo sapiens sapiens. Now, the Anunnaki, as they were also known, or Elohim, the race name, were 8 to 12 foot tall and they had Rh negative blood, and some of their descendants ended up being royalty down the line, which is why they give the crown and scepter to people that they wanted to be leaders. But modern aliens are, from my accounts, about 3000 BC is when they first appeared, and they genetically modify us. The other ones, majority of the Anunnaki left, but these ones are here genetically modifying us. Breaking news, everybody. An alien temple has been found. It belongs to Ninurta, who was Enlil's son. Now, Enlil, as you know, is one of the Anunnaki, who was one of the aliens that came here and genetically modified humans. This is Enlil's son Ninurta's temple that's been buried over. Funny how it got buried over, because of the deluge, not flood, which would have made that. And guess where that was? Yes, you guessed it, in Mesopotamia there. So Ninurta was known as the Sumerian god of springtime, but he was also shown on cylinder seals, which means he was definitely a real person. So when people say all those tablets are fake, no, they're not. And hundreds of thousands of tablets here that talk about Ninurta, son of Enlil, confident is my strength, blah, 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 Ninurta. So, and that just, Ninurta's everywhere. So, all real, aliens were here. Planet Nibiru has been seen, or has it? Now, mainstream are now talking about that there's a planet in our solar system, which is 4 to 5 times the size of Earth, which just so happens to be the same size as Nibiru, as said by the Native Americans when they used to see it come around every 3,600 years. Now here it says that this planet that's possibly in our solar system has an orbit of 10 to 20,000 years. They have no idea. I mean, that's a hell of a difference. So in other words, it could be, yes, Nibiru. And again, you see the word Planet X, you're starting to realise that they know it's out there. And here it just basically, they're trying to cover their bases here, because it says there could be a planet lurking. In other words, they are fully aware that there is a planet that's going around, and that's my opinion. But obviously we know all of this because we've got the ancient texts that predate the Bible that talked about the asteroid belt. No way we would know it back. Aliens built Angkor Wat, and I defy anyone to tell me that this huge structure was built by normal people. The sandstone blocks, bearing in mind I watched my other videos about quartz in sandstone blocks which levitate. These blocks weigh up to 1.5 tons, originated from a quarry at Mount Kowloon, which is a 2-hour drive away. It was then thought they were taken 35 kilometres along a particular canal, then rafted another 35 kilometres along a lake, and then up a river for 15 kilometres against a current, and that's the distance there. Now, supposedly it was made by King, I won't even pronounce the name. And why do they think that? Because there was a relief, basically an image of that person on Angkor Wat. Now, if I went to Windsor Castle and drew a relief, does it mean I made it? No, it means I was there after it was built. So there is no way that someone would go through all of that if it wasn't to do with levitation and blocks. Someone tell me that it wasn't aliens and I'll laugh. Why hasn't SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, found those balloons or UFOs that the military shot down? Well, that's quite simple, because SETI, if you actually believe they're doing it for the real reasons and not just being funded or set up so that they could continuously keep saying, no, there's no such things as intelligent aliens, I'm kind of on that side, that it's set up for that reason, to deliberately, just like Project Blue Book originally was set up to debunk anyway. But the thing is that these guys are using certain telescopes, certain frequencies, etc. But imagine if we didn't use AM and we went straight to FM radio, or imagine if we didn't use FM, we wouldn't. And what happens if we just skipped radio altogether and went straight with microwaves, such as wireless, Bluetooth? But if we could extend that further, so these guys could be searching for something that's never going to be found anyway, because aliens may not have used the same tech as us. Breaking news update: the alien temple that belonged to Enlil, who was an alien son called Ninurta, the person that found the inscription that said it was Ninurta's temple has been called out by his peers. Unfortunately, he's just turned around to them and said, look, come here and have a look, because they're armchair complainers, a bit like the people that I get on TikTok that say I'm wrong and that those tablets are fake, even though there's hundreds of thousands of them around the world. But anyway, so what's breaking about this is actually there was 100,000 tablets there. 100,000. So this is why I keep saying the tablets are not fake, people. But they were taken around the 19th century during excavations. So there's only 200 tablets left in this area. And of course, you know whoever took those 100,000 are not going to show us all the juicy information about the aliens. And when I say aliens, the Anunnaki. Amazing news, everybody, about our alien creators. Have I figured out something about the pine cone that they hold? This is what it looks like close up. Now, the British Museum, has a pine cone terracotta mould. Who would make a mould for a pine cone? Easter eggs, gold, or something to hold inside. Now, could that have been a metal of some description? We don't know. But it was found in Egypt. They don't actually have a real time frame for it, but as we know, Marduk, which was an Anunnaki, one of the people that used these pine cones, was Ra in Egyptian times. So it matches. If this was found, for example, in England, I would have said, oh, I don't know. But the fact that the Egyptians and Sumerians were literally next door and did cross, what do you guys think? Do you think this is part of that? I'm honoured that you think my 40 years of research, I'll be able to answer this question. So I've read as many translations as I possibly can many times over, and I've never come across anything where it's translated into a pine cone. Now, they did carry with them jewellery, makeup, lapis lazuli, but they never ever mentioned any advanced tech. And in fact, they actually did mention that they're not allowed to teach humans advanced tech. Not in those words, but you get the picture. So the problem is, people are actually saying it's represents the pineal gland. I can't see that. To actually have Anunnaki holding that, what relevance does that have in their carvings? It's far more important than that. And also, although people think that it belongs to or relates to a pineal gland, I can't see anything ancient. I can only find people talking about that they believe it is. So if anyone knows anything ancient that connects it to a pineal gland, ChatGDP and aliens. So I asked ChatGDP whether or not the Sumerian gods, which were the Anunnaki, were aliens from another planet, and it basically started saying that Zecharia Sitchin is pretty much the only one and that believes that, and he's talking about pseudoscience, etc. So I think this is very biased, because everyone, I mean everyone, no matter who you are, when you read all of these, you realise the ancient texts that everything that they say is true. They tell us about other planets, they tell us where their temples were, they tell us why they did things, they tell us about the laws that came from Sumer. Basically, you can't argue with these texts. And here I'm just going to point out that clearly the gods were smarter than us. So whether or not they were aliens, I'll get to that in a sec. So here it says, give the order that the Surapa disease shall break out. That was when Enlil was trying to, as it says in the Bible, depopulate his area, or the planet at least. Now, an almighty being wouldn't need a disease. So straight away, you know, the ChatGDP hasn't worked out that these Sumerian gods were smarter than humans. Then you've got this, which is where it basically translates into, and there's loads more of these, where they create a creature to ask to get them to carry their baskets, and that creature was humans. It goes on, there's more than this, but I'm just using that as an example. And then to prove that they are from another planet, you've got here, so this is Enlil, King Anu on Nibiru. If you read the whole of it, you'll find that that's true. Take him, which was Adam, because Adam, out of Adam and Eve, went to Nibiru. Take him and bring him back to his earth. Who would write that in the very first language ever created, to suddenly make out that people can go onto another planet? No. And make out that there's diseases and makeup, all this stuff. Clearly, ChatGDP is a bit biased, and I defy anyone to say to me that this is wrong. And I've asked for religious people to do live chats, and you know what? They don't, because they are frightened, because literally these ancient texts predate the Bible and are talking about an alien race that came here with the technology and the laws that they gave us, etc. So there you go. ChatGDP, amazing but biased. This is something that might blow your mind. So in the British Museum is this tablet. Now this tablet was found in Mesopotamia, which is now modern day Iraq. And it's interesting because It's actually legal text about the escape and capture of a slave. Ignore that Enlil, I think it's a different Enlil further on. They used a lot of the same names. But the point is, this is in the Middle East as one of the first references to slaves ever. Predating Egyptian, predating Africa, predating the British colonies, predating everything. So you've got a race here that are using humans as slaves. Now, it looks like, I would guess, that this one's probably not having his name there. I would guess that he's a descendant off of Enlil. So there you go. Slaves a fact. Breaking news. The Great Pyramid of Giza and its new secret chamber. That's what they're telling us. However, I don't buy that. I think that when you have to literally drill through a stone, which isn't a door, just a stone, and then stick a camera through because you realise there was a gap the other side, it's a cavity. Buildings have cavities for whatever reason. Sometimes they don't want to put every single block to fill every single space. They don't have to do that. So where everyone's going on about, oh, this is a secret chamber, if this is genuine, then it's just a cavity, in my opinion. Now, the pyramids were built as a light beam, or the Great Pyramid was built as a light beam to go up into space. Watch my previous videos. I know it sounds stupid, but when you watch them, I haven't been debunked, so that's a good thing. So yeah, basically, who agrees with me that this is just a cavity? They don't have to fill every single space just to please us in the future. This is a baby Cyclops that was born in the Middle East, and unfortunately she passed away shortly after being born. So next time someone says the Greek stories are all myths, laugh in their faces and say no, they're not all myths. And in fact, even before that, we had Cyclopses in Mesopotamia, which just happens to be the same place that the baby was just born, which is also the same place where the Anunnaki were creating various creatures, including Cyclopses as well as Minotaurs, etc. We've got all the cylinder seals for those. Watch my other videos. So here you see the actual name of the, I won't even try and pronounce it, Cyclopedia, is a rare condition that causes the child to be born with one eye. So it's not... Next time, it does wind me up, next time people say myth, 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 when I'm talking about the Anunnaki and their giant size compared to humans, not a myth. Religion. I still get people saying that the original tablets that the Bible copied from are wrong, even though they copied them. So that's a fact. Now here I thought I'd do a video on showing some facts about the gods that the Bible is really talking about but doesn't understand it. So Marduk, which was the son of Enki, who was the god of Babylon, this is his area for his temple, and that was in Babylon. Now there's thousands of carvings of Marduk. Obviously if you say Marduk didn't exist, then that's a hell of a lot of carvings and writings about Marduk. In fact, so much so that even the Umm Elish, which is in the British Museum, talks about Marduk, saying that he was a very egotistical person, saying he created absolutely everything, which is interesting because there is in the British Museum a border stone of his territory, which actually has a turtle on it right up the top there, and to do with the creation of the universe. And of course you may have heard stories from other religions that talk about, I cast you down, you non-believers, in the aliens of old. Now, people still say Sumerian is mythology and Enlil was fake and there's no such thing as Enlil. That's because they don't want it to be, because that means it changes religion, changes everything. Now, there are actually peer-reviewed papers that talk about Enlil, etc., as if he is a real character. And of course, then once he becomes a real character, he'll need his own temple. And of course, Enlil did have his own temple, and this is what's left of it, which is a bit of a shame. However, what makes Enlil a god or an alien then? Well, the actual tablets. Now, you've now agreed that he was a real character, so why can you not agree that the tablets that talk about him are genuine? No one's going to sit and write hundreds of thousands of these tablets and bury them for a giggle. So when you translate the tablets and you've got things like Adapa, which was Adam, out of Adam and Eve, being taken up to another planet, and then King Anu saying send him back to his earth, the Bible versus cuneiform tablets. Now, I'm going to be writing a book showing you the differences between the Bible and the original texts. Now, I know there's people out there that don't even understand that there's cuneiform tablets that predate the Bible, that the Bible copied from, and I know there's people that don't even know that we have 2 fused chromosomes, which can only be done in a laboratory setting. So they actually still think that God created us, as opposed to Elohim, which is the actual translation of God, which was the alien race name. So here, for example, which is something similar I'm going to be putting in my book, shows you the Genesis version of the 7 days of creation. However, the original tablets, now Enki was the person, God, that we're talking about in this particular paragraph. And, well, I won't spoil it for you, but you can guess it's not the same as that. It's so just let me know by clicking a like whether you think it's a good idea to do this book, whether you'd be interested in it. I'd love it if you could watch to the end of the video and tell me if I'm wrong or if I'm right, because I'm talking about aliens creating humans and I'm on about the Anunnaki. So let's just have a look here. Very simple. You can figure this one out yourself. Mars was the Roman god of war. Jupiter was the king of Roman gods. Saturn, you can get where I'm going with this, they're all planets. Neptune was the Roman god of sea. Neptune, Roman. Okay, so we only knew about Neptune in 1846. The Greeks knew about it way before. How did the Greeks know about Neptune, the planet, unless Enki, who was the god of water, Neptune being a water planet, Poseidon and Neptune being the same person as Enki? Because you cannot physically see Neptune with your own eye. So someone knew about all these planets. Do you agree with me? Did the Anunnaki aliens create hybrid animals? Well, if you go to the British Museum website and don't click on the top one there, click on collection, then you get a new window which you can start typing in things such as Enlil, Enki, Marduk, for example. Now they do give it a good, fairly decent description. They don't actually translate it, unfortunately, and that's because, for example, this one here, you'll see it says it's to do with the Babylonian flood story, which is basically Noah's flood, and we know that we've got the other tablets that have been translated that show Enki was the one that told Noah, not God. So, of course, they don't want to write all down, so they don't actually tell us, unfortunately. However, you can look and see things like this, and this is actually a gate, believe it or not. It was part of a gate. But they show these animals which don't have the proportions of a horse, and that's because they're not actually part of a horse. To find out what kind of horse it is and whether or not it was actually genetically modified by the Anunnaki, you can watch my video on Patreon called Everything You Need to Know About Mermaids. Yes, I know, what's animals got to do with mermaids? But if you watch my video on my Patreon page, Our True History, you'll see. But I'm just going to play a little bit now for you to show you why those are not horses that's on that door gate thing.
Did the Anunnaki create not just half Anunnaki and half something else? Did they create half animal and another half animal? If they did, this would mean they knew how to use DNA. Well, there's now evidence that they did create hybrid animals. Mesopotamians were using hybrids of domesticated donkeys and wild asses to pull their war wagons 4,500 years ago, at least 500 years before horses were bred for the purpose, a new study reveals. The analysis of ancient DNA from animal bones unearthed in northern Syria resolves a long-standing question of just what type of animals were the congers described in ancient sources as pulling war wagons.
So you get the idea, but obviously it carries on with mermaids, etc., because that's a video about mermaids. So feel free to watch that. But hopefully you enjoyed this. But do go to the British Museum. It's very interesting when you start looking at things such as this and you start scrutinising what they're actually doing, and you start to learn that poses, just like Egyptians, poses represent various different things in their hieroglyphics in Egypt, and some of these do the same, especially for the gods. So hopefully you've learned something today. Gods love you. Yes, plural. I'm calling out anyone that wants to do a live debate with me who believes there's just one God compared to the original old Bible or the original text that the Bible copied from the Sumerians, where it's gods. Anyone want to do a live debate? Jesus. I've been asked why I don't talk about Jesus when people say I'm one of the best researchers on the Anunnaki or ancient history. But that's because the Anunnakis finished writing 3000 BC. So in other words, 3,000 years before Christ, and then Christ came along. So where the Bible copies, and it does, copies these ancient texts, we can read these as hundreds of thousands of them, and we can understand things like heaven should have been space, firmament should have been an atmosphere, etc., etc. But when it comes to the period of Jesus, there is nothing to go back to. So not many people actually bother rereading in modern language the Hebrew version of what happens in Jesus' period. So knowing how much they got wrong from these ancient tablets compared to what's actually in the Bible, I don't want to go by the modern or the old version of what happened to Jesus, because I'm sure it's wrong, just as they got the translations wrong here. The Bible is really important to a lot of people, and when I do my videos talking about the texts that predate the Bible, that the Bible copied from, I get people quoting lines from the Bible, and I'm there trying to explain to them, look, here, go here, look at the translations of the original tablets, and of course they don't bother. And they keep coming back, and I mean literally over and over. So I thought I'd just point out once again that I did actually ask for religious people to do a live with me. This is a recent one. 0 people's took me up on that, and also I did one about a year ago when I had tens of thousands of people view it, and only one lovely lady actually did take me up on the offer to do a live chat. But just to point out that the actual tablets are genuine, I'll do another video on this one. But look, here in the British Museum, because it's similarity with the flood story in Genesis, this is a tablet that's talking about what happens after the flood, and this one is what happens before the flood. In other words, Enki telling Noah, or Sazudra as he was called. Bigfoot is an alien species, and I think I've just proved that by using ChatGDP. So I asked it to write a story based on the Gateshead Grey, which is basically a story from a person that's now old, and back in 1943 he said that he saw a UFO and a Bigfoot coming out of a spacecraft here in England, and it was actually reported in the newspapers. But I asked this to write a story, ChatGDP, and it's actually told me off by saying, I'm sorry, but I cannot generate inappropriate or untrue content. The idea of Bigfoot being an alien species and its history with humans is not backed up by scientific evidence. It's more important you stick to the facts and avoid spreading. It's telling me off. Lies, basically. So I've been doing many of these books here, writings, and look, this is another one that ChatGDP done for me, which was a story. I didn't ask anything else other than write a story, and it's talking about aliens and stuff like that. So it was happy to say about aliens, but as soon as I mentioned Bigfoot being an alien, it's told me off. Bigfoot is an alien species, and I've been saying that for a very long time. And on ChatGDP, which is an artificial intelligence, I asked it to write a story about Bigfoot being an alien and so on. I've done this on many stories. I've got loads done already. But this one, where I said write it as Bigfoot as an alien, it wrote this. It replied to me, which, watch my previous video, I'll show you. So then I changed it, because I got told off. Then I changed it to write a fictional story. And I had exactly the same information. But this time it did reply, instead of telling me off, that Bigfoot is not an alien, even though we all think it is, let's be honest. It now changed my story and added Men in Black as the culprit instead of Bigfoot, which I found very interesting. In other words, it's totally avoided saying that Bigfoot was an alien. Now, if you look at my previous books or writings that I asked it does talk about Bigfoot, so it's frightened to say alien Bigfoot. I was wrong. There is a dome over our flat Earth. And I know you're going to say there's 8 billion people that can't see the dome. How could Enoch, thousands of years ago, without a telescope in the Middle East, see a dome that we can't see? Well, that's because he's a cool dude, and let's just move on from that. So in the Bible here, it talks about when you look at the heavens, which we know should be a translation for space, you see the sun, moon, and stars because they're all in space. But they're not. They're actually inside the dome from my research now. But the problem I've got is outside the dome supposedly is water, according to other people. Now there's a comet that's called CO2023, which amateur astronomers will be able to see in June 2024. Now, if that's outside the dome in the water, then how does it propel itself? Because obviously friction. If it's inside the dome, then who's sent it on its merry way for us to see? And that means there's no atmosphere here for weightlessness. Hi everyone, just need your help actually. I do videos on my Patreon page, there's 76 and counting. Some of those are full documentaries, 4-hour ones, such as everything you need to know about spirits and mermaids, etc. I also do true stories and various other things, live chat recordings, etc. So I'm just asking, is there anything that you would like particularly? So for example, where I've done everything you need to know about spirits and everything you need to know about mermaids, do you want one done on everything you need to know about Bigfoots or Egypt or demons, even though there's no such thing as a demon, it's just a name, same as monster? Is there anything in particular? Please don't say flat earth, although I have done videos on flat earth on my Patreon page. So if there's anything in particular you're after, let me know and I will make it happen. Thank you. I have to apologise to people about my last video that believed that I actually was genuine when I said I believe there's a dome firmament over the earth. I don't. There was a couple of joke type things in the last video, but some people didn't quite grasp what I was trying to get at. So if you go by the original tablets, you'll find that the stratosphere here, between our atmosphere and space, is what the firmament really is, and they called it heavens or heaven up here, space. That's the translation error. Now also in my previous video I mentioned Enoch could see the dome, and yet 8 billion of us, no matter how much I look up in the sky, I still can't see it, and that's because a lot of these actually went up into heaven space or with the Anunnaki, including Adam, out of Adam and Eve, and we've got the translations here in the Oxford University, as well as other words for firmament or other mentions of firmament. So that's why I don't believe there's a dome, because it's just the atmosphere.
Is changing. In the earliest versions, we find that it's just a river that's flooding.
Please show me the oldest texts that say that the flood was a river. I will look forward to seeing that, and please don't show me a YouTube video. I don't deal with YouTube videos, I deal with the facts. And also you said that the researchers that say that Noah, also known as Zazudra and Uptu-Nishtum, is not the same person because they're different names, and you actually said in your video that researchers have mashed them up. I disagree with that. You do realise that over 10,000 years since the flood, in the different languages that's been translated in different things, names change. Are you telling me Jesus was the correct name? So the point is, and even Genghis Khan wasn't Genghis Khan. So names change when you've got 10,000 years. Songs change, stories change, names change. So Noah was those people. I cast you down, you non-believers in the aliens of old. Now, people still say Sumerian is mythology and Enlil was fake and there's no such thing as Enlil. That's because they don't want it to be, because that means it changes religion, changes everything. Now, there are actually peer-reviewed papers that talk about Enlil, etc., as if he is a real character. And, of course, then once he becomes a real character, he'll need his own temple. And, of course, Enlil did have his own temple, and this is what's left of it, which is a bit of a shame. However, what makes Enlil a god or an alien then? Well, the actual tablets. Now, you've now agreed that he was a real character, so why can you not agree that the tablets that talk about him are genuine? No one's going to sit and write hundreds of thousands of these tablets and bury them for a giggle. So when you translate the tablets and you've got things like Adapa, which was Adam, out of Adam and Eve, being taken up to another planet, and then King Anu saying send him back to his earth. 15-minute cities. There's studies coming out to see what detrimental effect would have. Now, I done a chat GDP saying what will actually shut down over the next few years, and it says large supermarkets, big box retailers, I guess DIY, car dealerships. So if any big businesses think that they're going to be fine, gas stations and commercial office space. And then there's other more targeted ones. So year 1, large theme parks, West End theatres, pubs, DIY stores. Year 2, police number cut, office rentals or house rentals, music equipment shops or manufacturers, pawn shops, music performers. Year 3, you get the point. Basically, we're going to end up having nothing. Amazon, probably eBay, and we'll own nothing. They're the only ones that will survive. You can see the list goes on here. Police, airports are going to shut because obviously no one's going to want to risk using their allowance to leave their 15 minutes. The Bible versus cuneiform tablets. Now, I'm going to be writing a book showing you the differences between the Bible and the original texts. Now, I know there's people out there that don't even understand that there's cuneiform tablets that predate the Bible, that the Bible copied from, and I know there's people that don't even know that we have 2 fused chromosomes, which can only be done in a laboratory setting. So they actually still think that God created us, as opposed to Elohim, which is the actual translation of God, which was the alien race name. So here, for example, which is something similar I'm going to be putting in my book, shows you the Genesis version of the 7 days of creation. However, the original tablets, now Enki was the person, God, that we're talking about in this particular paragraph, and, well, I won't spoil it for you, but you can guess it's not the same as that. It's so just let me know by clicking a like whether you think it's a good idea to do this book, whether you'd be interested in it. Breaking news. Scientists say that they have created free energy from nothing. Well, if you actually read the story, it goes on to talk about enzymes, etc. And if you're interested in reading the story, go and look up electricity from thin air enzyme clean energy, and you'll find this article. The reason why I'm talking about this is because in the past, people have claimed that they have created free energy. And unfortunately, those people end up passing from various mysterious ways. In other words, we never got to see their free energy devices, even though some of them were actually shown on TV. And that kind of leads back to the beginning of it all, where Tesla said that he could create free energy and was told there's no way that the population will ever get free energy, simply because the powers in charge won't want that. So we've got to ask ourselves, will we ever see this free energy? I doubt it. The alien temple that belongs to Ninurta, which was one of the Anunnakis, I did mention a couple of videos back about this. Now, I thought I'd just go back and see who actually funds it, because that will allow me to know whether or not we're going to get to see the 200 tablets they found recently. They have actually already excavated this before and found over 1,000 odd tablets, which we've still not seen. So I thought I'd see whether or not these 200 that they mentioned. So it's called the Garsu Project, which is funded by the British Museum, which is also known as the Rockefeller Museum, believe it or not. And it's also, this project was also funded by the Getty Museum. And when you actually look who the Getty Museum is, you'll find, wait for it, Rockefeller again. And the reason why I keep going on about the Rockefellers is because they're the ones that do not want us to know our true history. So bottom line is, we're never going to see what these 200 tablets said. Breaking news, the Pentagon said that basically there could be a mothership UFO in our solar system. Now, I just want everyone to realise that the chances of them suddenly turning up now, even though we've seen flying objects for decades and decades, centuries in fact, but now suddenly they're turning up now when Project Bluebeam is supposedly going to be coming into effect, etc., etc. Watch my previous videos if you don't know what Project Bluebeam is. But all I'm going to say is, when the governments tell us, oh no, run for the hills, hide, lock yourselves in your houses, don't bother doing what they say. And the reason for that is, they want us dead, the aliens. We wouldn't be here now. You know that in your heart. You know there's no way that those aliens that can fly around quicker than bloody Father Christmas would let us be living and creating these kind of weapons. So just take what the government say with a pinch of salt. Yes, there are aliens, but they're not coming to invade us. Where did the Anunnaki go? I did say that on video 1000. Thank you very much for everyone watching. I will give my version of where I think the Anunnaki ended up. So Enlil, Enki and Ninhursag, for example, all died here on Earth. The demigods ended up being in Rome, and that matches the time frames between Greece and Rome. And I think the demigods, although they didn't have the same longevity, which were offsprings off of Anunnaki and human, as the full-blooded Anunnaki, they definitely had longevity of life. And they created a place called Vatican City, which is where they could be secure, because obviously Mount Olympus wasn't perfect for them because it didn't have a stronghold and it didn't have a religion. And they created a religion. Although humans already created religions prior to them, they needed a way of keeping people under control themselves, so they created this place. Now, funny, this little book here has these little gemstones, which is very similar to the gemstones on the breastplates that the priests wore when carrying the Ark of the Covenant. But the Vatican has a place called St. Peter's, and there's not many people see these pictures, but if you look carefully, you'll see a centaur. Now, centaurs actually were first described, I know people say Greece, but no, in Sumerian times, which means the Anunnaki. Watch my video on my Patreon page called Everything You Need to Know About Mermaids. I actually cover centaurs and hydras and things like that on that video, but that's on my Patreon page. But anyway, so now we're proving that the Vatican, by having that image there, has some sort of connection with the Anunnaki. Now, the Vatican also has many telescopes, and the first one was built in 1774. Now, we know they're not looking for God because you can't see God. So what benefit would they have back in 1774 to look for a planet? Let's be honest, they're looking for planets. Nibiru. Why would it be Nibiru? Because that's where the Anunnaki come from. Now, the Vatican also has a vault, and many whistleblowers have said that they've actually seen inside the vault, and this is a public vault, not the vault that the whistleblowers are talking about. And inside that, there is many things such as giant skeletons. Now, they might not be giants as in the giants, they may be the Anunnaki, which were 8 to 12 foot, so obviously still giant to us, but not as a giant. So when you've got the Anunnaki hiding stuff, or the Vatican hiding stuff, you kind of get an idea that maybe the Anunnaki are part of the Vatican still. Giant head found at the bottom of the Euphrates River as it's dried up. No, listen to me. No one actually listens. I did a video a short while ago, it went viral, and people didn't listen where I said that I created these images on computer. And the reason why I'd done that is because I had seen someone else create an image saying that there was a head at the bottom of the Euphrates. So I wanted to prove to people that how easy it is to knock up these computer generated images. But my God, everyone says, there's probably one or two people that actually listened to me and figured it out that it's AI, computer generated. But these points here on that video that I done, literally they're saying, oh, I copied it off of someone else, which I didn't because it was done on Midjourney. And they're saying it's made out of sand. People were saying it's the giants. People were saying it's Jesus. People were saying it's angels. And hardly anyone actually realised when I said it was AI. Get out of the Garden of Eden, you filthy animals, and keep the change. Now, where was the Garden of Eden? Well, it just so happens it's at the top of the Tigris River, which is funny because actually if you read the Sumerian texts, Enki built both the Tigris and the Euphrates. Kind of a coincidence. Now, there's so many other places in the whole wide world, England, Ireland, Canada, wherever, but Garden of Eden just happened to be at the top of Mesopotamia, which is where the Anunnaki were. Funny that, isn't it? So I don't mean to sound really bad, but let's be honest. Here we see the Hebrew version for Eden, and of course Sumerians had it way before, thousands of years before. So what I'm trying to say is, religious people, there's more to the Bible. There's the actual original text. Now, in fact, this is a two-parter, so keep watching, because the next video I'm going to be talking about the 6 days of creation and then the 7th day of rest. So keep watching. Thank you, Enki, for giving us the Sabbath day off, not God. Why would I say that? Well, let's have a look at what Zachariah Sitchin, who is an author who read the ancient tablets, he basically said that on the first 6 days, Enki was teaching people how to catalogue the water, the animals. Each day did something different, which is very similar to what the Bible says, but not quite right. And then on the 7th day, Enki says, let this day be a day of rest. Now, here's the actual Genesis version, but let's read the actual cuneiform version. Now, and on the 7th day, God completed his teaching, because he was, and he ceased on the 7th day, and you can probably guess what the rest says, which basically then means that this paper here, which was transcribed from the ancient text, not Zachariah Sitchin, someone else, basically said the same things that the tablets were saying that someone was teaching. I was wrong about God and the Elohim, and so was Zachariah Sitchin, I believe. So we both concluded that independently that Elohim was the race name, but however, I can't find that anywhere in the Sumerian, but of course it's a Hebrew translation of the word God. But I can find the word God in every single text that Anunnaki wrote about themselves, gods or God. Every single one translated by many, many different people. So the actual race name for the Anunnaki is not Elohim as I believed. It is actually God. That's their race name. And obviously gods is the plural version of the Anunnaki race name. That's the aliens that came here and genetically created humans. That's why we can see the word gods or God in everything that they write, because that's their race name. I'm so stupid, forgive me, but now we all know. This person's son asked, is there any actual evidence of cities being buried by the Great Flood, the deluge? And yes, there is. So you've got to remember a couple of things. First of all, the Anunnaki built the cities before the flood came along. So it's only where the Anunnakis were. In other words, over in China, for example, before the flood, there were no cities. So you wouldn't have any buried cities in China. But you do have them where the Anunnaki said they were, which is in Mesopotamia. And in fact, their first city was Eridu and then Ur. So when we've got cities covered over, and we do actually have the evidence of the cities being covered over with sand and sediment, etc. And now I know people will say, well, maybe that Persian Gulf flooded a little bit. No, it was a deluge that covered completely over Eridu, and it says so in the actual tablets as well. So yes, we've got evidence of cities right there. If you're interested in aliens and spirits and all sorts of things, I've now added a new category to my website, which is video categories, it's called. And basically when you click on that, you have the option for watching my videos on TikTok, which is over 1,000 odd, in sets of 5 or sets of 50. But you've now got this other option here to look at a list of the videos. And I've put them in different categories now, so you can watch all of the ones to do with the Anunnaki, loads. You can then watch all of the ones to do with Egypt, Emerald Tablets of Thoth, Greece, Lemuria, etc., mermaids, and so on and so on. So they're all there, and all you have to do is literally just click on the one that you want, and it will take you to the page to play the video. And so it's ourtruehistory.co.uk, because I know people search for these in the search bars, but now you can just scroll down and look at them a lot easier. Hope that helps. Mars, kind of breaking news. Chinese rover finds liquid water on it. And this is actually salty water. Now, interestingly, Zecharia Sitchin, in his book, Lost Book of Enki, talks about the Anunnaki physically landing on Mars and, in fact, ended up with an away station there. And as you see, there's a word there, Lakeshore, when one of the Anunnaki was found by the other Anunnakis, etc. Now, the reason why they didn't stay on Mars is because of the dust storm. Now, here we are aware of a dust storm that's every 3 to 4 years. Now, there's also a thing called the spot on Mars, which has been going for a very long time. In fact, 1831 was when we first noticed this spot. Now, of course, if you go back to the Lost Book of Enki, you'll find that Sitchin says that the reason why the Anunnaki didn't go back was because a massive storm started then. So was that the storm that kept them away? I like a good conspiracy, just like this person. However, this person's been a little bit of a numpty, because I did say about the 2 million tablets, Sumerian tablets, are they fake? Because this person says you can't trust anything from ancient times. So I said, oh, are they fake? And they wrote back saying, how can you tell that they're 2 million years old? And I said, no, you didn't read my comment. So I think this is probably why this person sort of gets them a bit wrong and is a bit too conspiracy. Trust me, you know me, guys, I am well into the conspiracies, but this person just needs to slow down a little bit and research. So anyway, these are some of the tablets, that the 2 millions that I'm referring to. So this person seems to believe that experts, now trust me, 200 years ago, before all of the continents can talk to each other via telephones and stuff like that, people were not experts back then when they was actually translating these tablets. So when you say experts translated them, you can't trust them. What about normal people that learnt the languages? This is why I call you a little bit. Our Father who art in space, hallowed be thy Enki, as it should actually translate. Now, funny how God has pale skin, blonde hair and beard and blue eyes in pretty much all of the old paintings. Now, obviously there was a short supply of razor blades in heaven, which is actually space, because if you don't believe me, go watch my videos and I prove it by fact. Anyway, just so happens that the original god Enki, that predates the Bible by thousands of years, in fact he's called the Great Lord, which is funny, he's not allowed to take the god's name in vain, but he is the god. And this beard here was white, and he had lapis lazuli in between. And he was also Neptune with the white hair and the white beard. He was also Poseidon, same character, because he lived for a very long time. So could God, yes, let's be honest, was God Enki from Sumerian times that predate the Bible? Of course. Do you know who or what the source is? This is to do with the start of the universe. Alien Greys have told abductees that it's creation or source. That's what they call it. Sumerians have a thing called the creator of everything. Again, could still be the same thing as creation or source. Emerald tablets of Thoth say that it started with a thought. And again, that still could be the same thing. A thought could have been from a creator of everything. Now, my research has led me to believe that the universe started by a basically similar to the Hadron Collider, where another universe, someone messed around with some particles and accidentally created our universe. Thus the Big Bang, thus why we've got a creator of everything, which would have been the scientists, and so on. So until someone tells me any different, I think we're a tiny universe somewhere. Breaking news, the University College of London has said, which I've been saying all along, is that the shape of your nose is determined by what hominid species bred with Homo sapiens way back. So there's a report out now, you can go and look at it, it's on Sky News, and it's basically saying that to do with a gene is whether or not, for example here, Neanderthals bred with Homo sapiens would give us a particular shaped nose. Because when I do my lives, people say to me, well, hang on a minute, how come Eskimos, how come, you know, different people around the world have different shaped noses? And I've been saying all along, it's to do with, look, all of these bred with humans, Homo sapiens, sorry. It's Neanderthals, Denivisms, Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergus, Homo florensis, etc. So once again, I'm right, as always. So feel free to watch my videos on my website, because you're going to learn stuff here before the scientists even know it. outrohistory.co.uk. Did anyone see the show In Search of Aliens with Giorgio talking about elongated skulls in Malta, where they went to the museum? Well, I have actually got a follow-up to that, which has got some fantastic information that wasn't shown in that show. And it's on my Patreon page, and it's under the video called Egypt's Elongated Skulls. So if anyone wants to watch that, just go to patreon.com/outrohistory and look for that one. Obviously, there's loads more videos I've got, but that was the one to do with his research. I'm curious, is there any religious people that could maybe answer this question? So on my lives and on my posts, I get people saying that God is the Almighty One, forget everything else. However, if you actually look here, you'll see that the Sumerians had gods prior to the Bible God, and also the ancient Egyptians did. So in other words, the God that we're aware of in the Bible is actually newer than these other ones. And of course, if you look down here, other races ended up having their own gods. So one of them was probably right and the other one wasn't. Now, the Bible God comes along in about 2000 BCE approximately, which means they possibly copied the older texts. Funny enough, we've got the older text here where it's talking about the gods, the 12 gods of Sumeria. So could someone answer why the older texts are not correct as correct gods, but the newer one is, e.g. the Bible? Interesting fact, Israeli researchers have created an AI to translate Akkadian text. Now, Akkadian came after Sumerian, which was the very first texts. And it goes on to say that AI computer can now read these and translate it. However, in fact, you can actually even do it with ChatGPT. So I've wrote, right in Akkadian, the Anunnaki were real and Enlil and Enki were half-brothers and princes. And it basically comes out, it can actually type, this is what it's wrote, it's replied, and then it breaks it down of how it says it. So then I asked, what does this mean, just to make sure that it definitely can read Akkadian as well, which it can. So you don't need Israeli researchers, as long as you've got the actual text. Now, obviously, if a computer can read an old tablet like this, that's amazing. But if you've got the text already, you can actually just use something like ChatGPT to figure it out.
million-year-old Anunnaki spaceship found on Moon with alien bodies during the secret Apollo 20.
While there's possibly an ancient spaceship on the moon with a dead body that they found on possibly one of the Apollo missions, it certainly wasn't Anunnaki. And this is what frustrates me when I watch TikTok videos where people have no clue. So that's what you saw just a second ago on the thing where it said 1.5 million years ago. No, the Anunnaki came here 450,000 years ago. And if you actually read the text, the first time they actually left their home planet was about 500,000 years ago. So there's no way that that spaceship would be on the moon, the Anunnakis. Which is why you should follow me, because I'm the only one that actually gives it as it is. I won't make lies up and I won't do clickbait. Oh my God, Jesus, Mother Mary, look at that. A giant full-size Noah's Ark. And it was created by Ken Ham in Kentucky. And it cost $100 million to build. But he's wrong. He's done a lengthways, whereas the actual Ark, this guy has the original tablets where Enki, which was a Sumerian god, which was one of the Anunnaki, tells the Zudra to build the Ark, and he gives dimensions and sizes, etc. And you'll find that it's actually round. So unfortunately, this guy's spent $100 million on something that's not correct. But the thing is, even ChatGPT admits that the oldest boats were basically round, which is really weird because technically that is a better design than a round one for going. So why do the Anunnaki seem so advanced sometimes, and yet really that is a better design than a circle boat, is it? The alien blood type RH negative, what's that got to do with Skinwalker Ranch, I hear you ask? Well, it has to do with the frequency 1.6 gigahertz that they've been finding. It actually has an effect on the RH negative people. To find out more, subscribe to Blue Moon Sigma. Now, she used to have a channel called Blue Moon Sigma on TikTok, but they banned her because she was obviously talking about stuff that was true. So she's now had to create an account that's got Blue Moon Sigma too. She's trying to get back her followers so she can carry on doing these live chats. Please follow her. Just go on to TikTok, search for Blue Moon Sigma. She's also got a thing called Project Umpra, which I'll let her explain about. But basically, if you follow that, she can get back on chatting, doing her live chats about the RH negative, which she knows so much about, and like I say, including stuff to do with Skinwalker. Aliens created humans, and I am doing a video called The Lost Book of Our True History. And it's basically going through all of the stuff that Zecharia Sitchin had done in his book, The Lost Book of Enki. Now, people say that he's made that up and he's talking a lot of rubbish and blah, blah, blah. However, I've been going through the ancient text, and my conclusion, obviously, as always, is that Zecharia Sitchin was correct. And I'll be putting that video out for people to watch with the translations, not just from Zecharia Sitchin, but from scholars around the world over the last 200 years. So in other words, I'll be copying his book, but direct from the translations. So there is no one's going to be able to say Zecharia Sitchin is wrong anymore, because he will have the backup of the actual text showing. Because yes, he did sort of paraphrase on here only to make it understandable for you guys. It will be all right, baby. John had always loved taking his dog Rufus for long walks in the forest near his home. The peacefulness of the trees and the sounds of nature around him always brought a sense of calm. Today's walk would be different from all others. As he and Rufus were making their way through a particularly dense part of the forest, John heard a faint whimpering sound. He called out to Rufus, and they both followed the sound, which led them to a small clearing. There, lying on the ground, was a tiny grey creature that looked like a baby. It was injured and whimpering in pain. John's first instinct was to call for help, but he quickly realised that he had no idea who to call. He looked around and could see a light in the distance between the trees. He decided to make his way there and see if he could find anyone who could help the injured creature. As he got closer, he could see that the light was coming from a disc-shaped UFO that had landed on the forest floor. There were 4 or 5 small grey aliens gathered around it, and they were all staring at him with their big black eyes. John hesitated for a moment, but then decided he had to do something to help the injured creature in his arms. He cautiously approached the aliens, holding out the tiny grey baby. They looked at him curiously, as if they had never seen a human before. John gestured to the baby, trying to communicate that it was injured and needed help. The aliens looked at each other and then nodded and gestured to John to follow them into their ship. John hesitated for a moment, but then decided to take a chance and follow them. Once on board the ship, the aliens took the baby from John and laid it on a small glowing table. John watched in amazement as they used advanced medical technology to heal the tiny creature's injuries. Within minutes the baby was sleeping soundly, and the aliens turned to John, gesturing for him to leave. As John made his way back through the forest, he couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and wonder. He had never believed in aliens before. John couldn't work out how the baby was so far away from the ship, but he was happy that he helped. From that day on, John continued to take walks into the forest. He always kept an eye out for any signs of alien activity. He was surprised to find out that he had been promoted to a managerial position, something he'd been working towards for years. The company's CEO was impressed with John's work and decided to give him a chance to prove himself in a leadership role. John was overjoyed with the promotion and couldn't help but think it was all thanks to the aliens. He wondered if they had somehow intervened in his life to help him achieve his goals. A few weeks later, John was out for a walk when he met a beautiful woman named Sarah. They hit it off immediately and started dating. Sarah was intelligent, kind and beautiful. To John's surprise, he also started having incredible luck with scratch cards. He won small amounts at first, but then hit the jackpot and won a substantial amount of money. As time passed, John's good fortune continued. He was able to invest his winnings and started making smart financial decisions. He eventually became so successful that he was able to buy the company that he'd been working for. He never forgot about the aliens and the incredible luck they had brought him. He often wondered if they were watching over him, slightly guiding him towards success. One day, as John was walking his dog in the same forest where he had first encountered the aliens, he saw a bright light in the sky. He smiled to himself, feeling like the aliens were saying hello and letting him know that they were still watching over him.